find your mob, find your group of people that, will actually help you through the process. Find those people, if they're mentors, that will actually remind you of who you are, remind you of your talents, and find people sideways as well, people at the same level of your career who will actually support you and help you.
Welcome back to HPG Engage, the podcast. It is my pleasure today to introduce to you Professor Manuela Ferreira. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, Professor, for coming on and speaking to us today. Professor Manuela is a Professor of Musculoskeletal Health here at the Collins Institute, and the work that she's been doing here has been absolutely amazing and groundbreaking in the area of chronic back pain. So first of all, Professor, we just want to have a quick chat with you and kind of bring us back to the start, where this all began. And I guess we can go back to what you studied at university and kind of why you studied those disciplines.
Okay. So I'm a physiotherapist. So I went to university in Brazil, where I was born, and I studied physiotherapy. Why did I choose physiotherapy? I've always wanted to work in health. It was always my intention. And I didn't really want to be a medical doctor. And I was a ballet dancer for probably about 12 years. And I've always watched the physios treating the ballet dancers. And that was something that really attracted me. So it was basically because I wanted to treat ballet dancers. Never did.
The intention was there.
It was there. When I started physio at university, I was also doing ballet college. And I soon realized that it was going to be too hard to do both, and ballet is really, really competitive. So then I decided to go to research.
I feel like research is also very competitive as well.
A lot more competitive.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so I don't know why I did that. But anyway, so I'm a physiotherapist. That's my background, and that's probably why I chose it, because I wanted to work with movement, and it seemed perfect.
Awesome. And what were the actual... So after you did physiotherapy, that was an undergrad degree?
Right, yeah.
And then what was after that?
So after that, I did my first master's, which was in sports physiotherapy. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to treat ballet dancers, but maybe athletes. Never treated athletes. But that was my first master's, and then I really got hooked into research. So I decided to do my master's in science, and that was in cell biology. So I was working with in basic research with animal studies.
Yeah.
I did that for 2 years, and then I got a scholarship to come to Australia and do my PhD. That was right after I finished my master's in December 2000, and I started my PhD in January 2001. So it was very
from one extreme to the other.
Yes, exactly. And clinical research. So I decided that I wanted to work with people this time.
Ah, okay. So what made you choose, just going back to the masters in cell biology, what made you choose cell biology in animals? Like what about that was kind of enticing for you?
It was more about the science. It was a very strong program at the university where I got a scholarship to do that. So it was a very strong program, and I was really into the science. But I soon realized that, I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy sacrificing animals.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good to hear.
And I wanted to do some more clinical research.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I decided to come to Australia.
And what about Australia was the drawing aspect? Was it the kind of level of education you'd receive here? Was it one of the best in the world? Or was it kind of, I'll apply for a few different scholarships and whichever one comes back? Was Sydney or in Australia very much the one that you wanted to go for? Yeah,
Australia, definitely. I looked at different universities, Sydney, South Australia and Western Australia. It was just because in the field that I was interested in, and that was back pain research, it is still the top of the top researchers are here in the world.
Yeah.
So I was really, really attracted to the programs here. And of all of them, Sydney was the one that really attracted me the most. So I decided to come to Sydney. I got a scholarship in Brazil and came in January 2001.
Awesome. And why do you think all the top researchers in this area are based in Australia? Do you think, what is it?
It's a good question. I think it was maybe some years ago, maybe some decades ago, the way that researchers here really revolutionized the treatment of back pain and the way they looked at musculoskeletal conditions, especially back pain, was very different to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And that plus some very, very smart people who are still here.
Yeah, for sure.
and very successful people. I think that was a perfect combination.
Awesome. And then let's go into your research of back pain. What about this area was the driving force for you to specialize in? Why this area? Did you see there was a need for the research within society? Obviously, chronic back pain is very much an issue all across the world. But what about this area was like, oh, I need to do the work in this part of the research industry?
It started because I just found it very interesting. If you look at the biomechanics of the spine, it's really fascinating. A lot of bones and how the muscles and the bones and the joints all work together. So it was fascinating. This is how it started. There was probably a little bit of a personal story as well. So my father had back pain his whole life, and I saw him suffer with back pain, which probably made me want to find a way of helping people with back pain.
Yeah, for sure.
But nowadays, back pain is actually the number one cause of disability in the world. Is one of the most prevalent conditions in the world, and we really need to do something about it. We haven't been able to too much so far. So that's why I stayed in the field, because there is still a lot to be done. And I'm very much looking forward to doing something about it.
That's good. That's so true, because I have so many friends who always are complaining about having a sore back. But I think a lot of times it becomes such a constant pain over an elongated period of time that people just learn to live with the pain. It's like, oh, this is just how it's going to be now. And they don't really look to seek help, because when it becomes so chronic and it's just always there, people don't really see that pain as something that they need to go after and check out. If it's your heart, people are like, I need to check out my heart right now. But for some strange reason, when it comes to a sore lower back, where your spine is, the part of the bone that keeps you moving, people don't seem to take that as seriously. Why do you think that is?
That's the thing, right? I think people need to get better information. So not everyone needs to see a doctor if they have back pain.
Yeah.
But they need to know when they need to see a doctor, and they need to know that it's okay to keep moving, which is another big problem with musculoskeletal conditions in general, but especially with back pain. A lot of people see pain and pain intensity being the same as injury. So if there is a lot of pain, don't move, just stay in bed and it's going to go away.
Yeah.
But it's actually the opposite. So the longer you stay inactive, the worse you get. So I think we have a lot of misinformation about back pain. You touched on a very interesting point. So cardiovascular disease, for example, if people have a heart condition, there are some signs that will tell them, and this is very well known now. So everyone knows it, and researchers and clinicians are very good at actually communicating that to patients. So if you have these certain signs, go see a doctor. But please know that you have to take care of yourself and your lifestyle for the rest of your life.
100%.
So you have to watch your diet, you have to use the medication that you've been prescribed, and you have to exercise. We haven't got to that point with back pain yet.
Yeah.
So it's really, if it hurts, we'll stop.
Stop moving.
And that's not good for you.
That's so true. We actually did a podcast a couple of years ago, the first round of the COVID situation, and with a musculoskeletal therapist, and he talked about how a lot of people will come to him with a pain in their back or a pain in a part of their body, and obviously the patient's first thought is, I need this fixed. But he always sits back and speaks to them. Okay, talk to me about your life. Are you having financial issues? Have you got family issues? Have you been fighting with your partner for a long period of time? Because he said what he finds is when you begin to look at someone from a holistic point of view and you learn to understand different parts of their life, that can have then a knock-on effect on how their body. For example, if you're struggling in a financial aspect of your life for a long period of time, you're going to be tense. Your body's going to be tense, and then that's just going to flow down and then cause some sort of back pain. Obviously, there's a bit of him obviously having to do physical work on them, but he says a large part of it is also trying to help them figure out what their day-to-day life is that could potentially be a knock-on effect on that. Would you find like that is an important part when it comes to your research? We need to figure out what people are doing day to day to actually maybe even cause these back pains?
Absolutely. So we know that your psychological status will influence on your progression or back pain progression.
Sure.
So whether you're going to get better sooner or later, or even how much pain you perceive. Not necessarily a cause, but definitely it does interfere in how you perceive your pain. And not only that, we know as well that sleep, for example, if you don't sleep well, you're more likely to perceive your back pain, to notice that you have pain in the back. And the other way around, the more pain in the back that you have, the less well you sleep. So,
just like a constant circle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of that. So if a clinician can actually break that cycle somehow, that would be really useful.
And what would you suggest to someone to do on a day-to-day basis in order to ensure that they maybe decrease their likelihood of developing chronic back pain? Someone that maybe doesn't know anything about this, what would you suggest to them?
The one thing that we know that works is exercise.
Yeah.
That's it, physical activity. And by physical activity, I don't mean that you have to run 30 minutes every day. So there are the guidelines and the specify how much exercise you need for your general health.
Yeah.
But you do need to exercise, go for a walk. Standing or sitting for too long or lying for too long, staying in the same position for too long, that's not good for your general health and that's not good for your spine. So exercise, light, moderate or intense, but do exercise.
100%. And I find a lot of more corporate companies where they have people in 9 to 5 are now trying to almost motivate people to become more active. I know a lot of offices now are implementing stand-up desks. Absolutely. Something as simple as that. Or even I have a few friends who work in companies where they do weekend step competitions. So whoever gets the most steps over a weekend, they get, I don't know, $100 gift voucher or something like that. I had a friend who walked, I think 20,000 miles or 20,000 steps, one weekend just because he's a competitive person. He's like, I want to get this. So even something as simple as that has a very, very positive knock-on effect for the future of healthcare and the future of chronic back pain.
Absolutely. And I know a few people like that too. It's all about walking the walk, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Literally walking the walk. So I know people, I work with people who will actually have walking meetings, for example. If you have a meeting, why not go for a walk while you're having that meeting? I usually try to, for example, if I have to print something, to go to go for a walk, or if I can print or use a printer that is further away from me.
Yes, you'd go to that one instead.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Park my car further away from the office so I can do a little bit of walk on the way to the office and on the way from the office. So those little things can actually improve your general health as well.
I just want to take it back slightly in terms of your transition into the position that you're in now. You obviously left Brazil, moved here to study, and then now you're working in the Collins Institute as a research fellow. How did that happen? Did you have, what was the process with that in terms of actually getting your foot in the door? Because obviously, as we've touched on earlier, this is way more competitive than ballet. So how did you end up right here in front of me?
That's a very good question with sweat and tears, lots of tears. So I came and I did my PhD. Then I went back to Brazil and I had a teaching position at a university in Brazil. Some years later, there was a postdoc or a research position here at Sydney University, and I applied for it and I got it, and I decided to come. So I came with my family. And from then, I went to different positions or different fellowships, which is how the
research
how researchers are paid.
Called, yeah.
So I've had different fellowships for the past 15 years, and I've been very, very blessed to have been supported by different organizations, the government. At the moment, my salary comes mostly from the government.
Yeah.
But it is a very, very competitive process. And just to give you an idea, for me to get my second fellowship, so my first one I got when I was in Brazil and I moved, but my second one, I got it when at the fourth time. So I tried 4 times before I could get a fellowship. And that is
crazy. And how is it?
Really hard.
The 4 times is over what period of time? How many times?
It was over 5 years. 5 years, because it's once a year. So and during that time, I had people, a research grant here, so I would work on that grant. And that money would support my salary. And but it was really, really tough.
It's almost like a constant fight.
It's
because you're obviously
constant fight.
Anyone that's doing research in Australia, you're obviously if it's from the government, you're all taken from the same pool of money. So it's
really competitive. So we know, for example, that the success rate now is about 8%, which is for government fund fellowships, which is not ideal. It is lower for women, which again is not ideal.
Interesting. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
For a number of reasons. We talk a lot about gender bias. So there is a bias when you are, and it's not something done on purpose, it's
just subconscious.
It is subconscious
bias. Yeah.
So when people are reviewing grants that come from women and come from men, women tend to apply less, for example, or submit less applications as the main investigator. Yeah. For a number of reasons, because of how we perceive ourselves.
So do you think that's an interesting point you just made? As the main investigator, so do you think there are probably a lot of women that would maybe, if they're partnering with a man on a research, that they would put the male as the main investigator because there is a likelihood that they'll probably get accepted?
I'm not sure it would be, again, so evident. So you go first because I think you're a man and it's easier for me. For you to get it funded, but there are a lot more women who would not have that same position as the man, as the lab head, for example, or the supervisor, or so. Because when we get to that point, when women get to that point, a lot of women will have given up and changed careers. So there are less women at that very senior.
Because it's almost like a constant uphill battle.
Exactly. They call it the bottleneck. The bottleneck effect. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it is it's not interesting. It's really sad. And we've been trying to change it.
Do you think it's gotten better since you first started?
I think it's gotten better, but it's still very, very far away from being
where it should
good.
Be. Yeah.
But it's gotten better. Again, women stop their careers, they interrupt their careers when they have kids,
for example.
Right?
Yeah.
And the research career is just one of those things that if you stop, it's really hard to catch up again. Yeah. So sometimes you can claim that I didn't work for 1 or 2 years, or I worked part-time for 1 or 2 years because of family.
Yeah.
But it's still very, very hard to compete with people who have never stopped. and have a lot more publications or can travel. I couldn't
Yeah.
travel overseas.
Because I guess a
for-
lot of it's networking as well and getting in front of people
Absolutely.
face to face.
Absolutely. And going to conferences is a big opportunity for you to network with
Yeah, for
people
sure.
from overseas. And if you can't travel because of kids, or if you choose not to travel, and I chose not to travel for a period of time because of my kids,
Yeah.
it really has an impact on you. So there, you asked me why. There are a number of reasons, and there are a lot of people doing very good research around that.
Interesting. Okay. So let's touch on some surgical trials
Yeah.
that you've been doing. You mentioned to me about the placebo trial that you guys have done. Can you just talk to me about that? Because I found it so interesting when you first told me.
Yeah, not a problem. So one of the studies, the trials that we are doing at the moment, it's a placebo-controlled trial of surgery. So what we are doing is there is one type of surgery, they call it surgical decompression. So that's when they remove part of the bone in the back, because we believe that when the nerves are being compressed, smashed, that's when people have pain. So if you actually remove that part of the bone, then it releases the nerves and then the pain. So this is something that this type of surgery has been done for a very, very long time. But the problem is usually with surgery and invasive procedures, there is a strong placebo effect. And that had never been tested for this one type of procedure. So it had been tested for other types of surgery, shoulder surgery, knee surgery, but not for back pain or not for back surgery. So we are currently conducting the SUCCESS trial, which is a placebo-controlled trial of decompression, surgical decompression for people with spinal stenosis, which is one type of back pain. And what we do is patients are randomly allocated to either having the surgery, where the bone is removed,
Yeah.
or having a surgery where the bone is not removed, which is what we call the placebo surgery. And the answer in the end is going to be whether surgery works or has an effect that goes beyond placebo
Or not. That's so interesting because you mentioned that they literally have them on the table, they cut them open, and then they just close them back up again.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Are they on the table for a certain length of time? So obviously, if you're actually removing the bone, I don't know how long the surgery would be. I don't know, a few hours. So the person who's the placebo aspect, are they on the table for those 3 hours just opened? And then, so the body's kind of under that opened, like, stress on the general anesthetic and stuff like that? Or how does that work?
It's not that as dramatic as that.
Thinking Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. So it's usually about half an hour, the whole procedure.
Okay.
It's not a very long procedure. And when they get to the point where they would remove the bone, they get an answer or a call saying yes or no. And then if it's a no, they will just finish the procedure.
They're actually not told.
They're not told
until
before.
they actually get into the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that really minimizes the risk. And that's the thing with placebo surgery, right? A lot of people think that because it's placebo, it's associated with more risk.
Yeah.
But there is plenty of research showing that it's the other way around. So placebo is actually associated with less common and sometimes even less severe risks and adverse events than the whole procedure.
Yeah.
Because, for example, and again, the adverse events and the complications with this type of surgery are really minimal. But some of them are associated with the fact that you remove the bone. So that doesn't happen in the placebo surgery. So the and again, for you to get something like this approved by ethics, you really need to make sure that the risks are not greater. You're not going to put people at a greater risk of complication just because of science. So so all of that needs to be really clear to the patient, to the clinician, to the researchers, and to the ethics committee. So again, it's not as dramatic, but they are there for
not
the
3
same.
hours.
But they are there for the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And they receive exactly the same care before and after, exactly the same.
And then obviously based on that, you then can make your analysis on the overall. Let's go in. We kind of touched on this already in terms of the difficulty and some of the roadblocks basically when it comes to research, because obviously a lot of people don't realize that research needs to be funded and money needs to be given, and because it's a very expensive process. You're having to pay yourself, I guess some of your PhD students, you have to pay for materials and all that sort of stuff. So obviously you're here at the Collins Institute, and also here at North Shore there's obviously the North Foundation. Can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of the North Foundation, donations and philanthropy in terms of ensuring that all this continues to grow?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, researchers live on salaries that are provided by a research institute, research foundation, or the government. So the salaries need to come from someone else. So there are very, very few research jobs that you apply. For example, the university will cover all of the costs for someone to do research only. So you need to find research funding or salary funding for yourself as a researcher. Besides that, you need funding to cover your staff, and you need funding to cover the costs of your research. So that's why it's so difficult, and that's why it's so competitive. And again, if you think of all of the extra barriers that women face, it is even harder.
Yeah, for sure.
It's what they talk about the glass ceiling, and women usually have to work 3 times harder to get to the same level. Stage, same level. So foundations like the North Foundation, for example, are absolutely essential, because especially with everything else going on in the world, research funding is not very it's becoming rare, and it's becoming really scarce. So it is really important to have the North Foundation and philanthropy and donors really supporting research. We need support from people. We cannot rely on government funding only. We need support from other sources as well. Otherwise, I'm not sure what's gonna. Yeah, I'm not sure what's gonna happen to.
What's normally the process whenever you are attempting to gain donations from a philanthropic point of view?
So
do you have to put documentation together? Do you have to organize your own meetings to meet with these people face to face? Obviously, you talked about conferences as well. What's that process like?
So in terms of philanthropy, usually work with a foundation, like North Foundation, Sydney University, they also have a foundation. So you usually work with a foundation, and they can either help you organize those meetings in donating funding to either a certain specific project or a cause or a theme. So it's usually coordinated by foundations such as the North Foundation, and again, that's why it's so important to have them.
That's amazing. Let's go into the future of healthcare and the future of your research. What are some of your hopes for what you think what you're doing is going to do to society and affect society?
So my hope for my research is to continue doing the trials that I'm doing at the moment, more and better and larger trials that will actually identify what works and what doesn't work for back pain. Once we know a little bit more, my goal is to actually ensure that patients are getting what works and are not getting what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's my goal for my research. The future of healthcare, I think what we've seen with COVID is really, healthcare professionals are really tired. They're exhausted. It's been really, really, the burden has been really, really heavy on them. But I think it has also built resilience, not only on the professionals, but also on the healthcare system. I think we have been identifying a lot of the gaps and where the gaps are.
Yeah, for sure.
This is what the pandemics do. So I think the future is looking good. It's bright. I will refuse to say anything now.
Positive mindset, I like
Because I
it.
am
Goes a long way.
optimistic, yeah. We have we still need to do a lot of work to get where we want to. But I do think it's looking bright. And for example, here at the Colin Institute, because we are so, again, blessed to be working side by side with clinicians, I think that's the solution moving forward as well.
Sure.
Researchers and clinicians working
together.
Where are the gaps in knowledge? Where are the gaps in practice? How do we solve this together? And then moving forward.
Amazing. And do you think there's maybe an onus to also be put on just general public in terms of the education behind just overall health as well? Because that's obviously going to be a massive help in terms of the amount of people suffering from chronic pain.
Absolutely. We need to do a better job at communicating with patients, and with not only with patients but the general community, about what works and what doesn't work. And that's a big challenge, because we it's hard sometimes to compete with big pharma or with beliefs that have come from such
years and years
exactly.
of how things are done.
Exactly. So it's not an easy job, but we definitely need to do that. It's the three need to work together, right? The four, so policymakers, clinicians, patients, and researchers. If we don't work together, if we don't sit around the table and decide what we're going to do about this, again, in back pain, how are we going to move away from what doesn't work, and how we're going to move towards what works. If we don't do it together, then it's going to be harder.
For sure. Thank you very, very much, Professor Manuela. But before we go, one last question. Obviously, with HPG Engage, the podcast, it's in conjunction with the company, which is called HPG. We're a healthcare professionals group, and we recruit across all levels of healthcare. So do you have any tips or suggestions for someone who's maybe thinking of taking a similar career path to you, and how would they kind of navigate that?
Yeah, go for it. That's one tip.
Love it. Number one.
If you really, because if you're thinking about it, it's probably because you have a passion. Make sure you do have a passion and go for it. I never had a plan B, which sounds really weird, but I never had a plan B.
I feel like that's a good thing sometimes, because then if you didn't have the plan B, like, it's either this or nothing.
It has to work.
Yeah, it has to work. Yeah,
failure was not an option. So that's one tip. The other one is find your mob, find your group of people that will actually help you through the process. Find those people. If they're mentors, that will actually remind you of who you are, remind you of your talents, and find people sideways as well, people at the same level of your career who will actually support you and help you. And don't forget to bring those who are, I'm not going to say behind, but who are aspiring to be like you. So bring them
up with you.
Up as well. Yeah. So people is my other tip. Find the right people to work with, and then the third one is try and have fun. I didn't for a while. I was so worried about getting the fellowship and getting the grants that I really lost the taste for research, and that wasn't a very good period of my life. So really have fun. Remind yourself why you're doing this. You're doing this for patients. You're doing this for science, and try and have fun. So maybe those are my tips.
That was amazing. Again, thank you very, very much, Professor Manuela. This has been a great podcast. I'm sure anyone that's listened will agree. And they've been educated, they've been inspired. But yeah, again, thank you very much for sitting down with me.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
You did a great job.